I had stuff that's so deep inside of me that I wasn't aware, not knowing that me stuffing that in me was actually stopping me from accepting intimate romantic love, and I didn't know it. God had to permit that to come up. The moment that I started healing that, maybe a year later, me and my wife found each other.
Wow.
So again, another lesson. What things are actually being stopped or voided or barricaded out of our lives because we've buried trauma so deep in us? Some blessings, they are ours, but they're kind of like airplanes waiting for their landing pad. They got to keep circling over and over and over because there's some trash on the landing strip. And God loved you and them too much to allow that to land and enter into your life.
That's good.
Yeah.
Healing myself. I'm healing my.
Hey, what's up, y'all? Welcome to Healing Myself, the podcast. I'm Scott Hayes, a licensed clinical social worker.
And I'm Shatay Hayes, producer and certified business and mindset coach.
You've just tuned in to Our Revolution. We're on a mission to help our community find freedom from the inside out. So we host conversations about God, therapy, and all the lessons we've learned about how to love, trust, forgive, and affirm ourselves first.
We used to talk about the hard parts of life. Now we talk about the healed parts because that's where true freedom resides. Join us and you'll see that when you save yourself first, you transform your life and you lead the way for those around you to save themselves too. Okay, so today's conversation, who knows what we're talking about?
Got it there.
Yeah. So for us, this weekend was a rebirth of kind of for us as well. So we thought that's why we chose this weekend. We wouldn't do it again this weekend, but we were like, rebirth for Christian faith, but then also for us. And then we talk a lot about God and therapy and what we've learned and how we need them both. And so we just thought it would be a perfect conversation for this episode. And we love for y'all to talk back. So we didn't want it to be us talking at people, us preaching at people. If we wanted that, we would have gotten a stadium or amphitheater where y'all were just looking at us. We wanted something where we could interact with each other, hear your thoughts, hear what you experience or what you feel about what we're talking about. So feel free to just talk back to us. Really want this to be a community feeling. We got Broderick here, McBride. Yeah. You want to tell us who you are?
Sure. So I am Broderick McBride. I go by my last name, McBride. I too am a podcaster. I am the second half of the Let Out podcast with my sister Sade Martin. And we call ourselves two church kids that just talk about any and everything, right? I am a graduate of Morehouse College, wrapped up with a degree in psychology, attended Candler School of Theology, graduated with a Master's of Divinity, concentrating in pastoral care and Christian ethics. My goal was to never do anything in ministry or church. My goal was to go to law school and flip tables in Jesus' name. And be it as it may, I have been serving in mega church spaces since I graduated from Candler. So I am one of those mental health advocates who come in under the skies of, hey, I'm just here to help you build out your pastoral care area of the church, bereavement, benevolence. But once I get to the table, I'm advocating for mental health accessibility and resources for congregants, but also affirming space of all people. So those folks that are a part of LGBTQIA community, but also our youth as well. And so I found myself being a merge between Malcolm X and Martin and Jesus and spaces where Jesus flipped tables. So it's just funny how sometimes the divine causes you to have these full circle moments. I am happily married to my wife, Shannon. She was supposed to be with me today, but we are 7 months pregnant with a 2-year-old toddler. So mama is busy. So mom said that she would stay at home with baby and do nap time. And here I am. So I'm so happy to have this invitation to take up space with you all. So thank you both.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
You want to start us off?
No.
You got the question right here.
I'm excited to have this conversation. Have been trying to reconcile for a long time. I think the relationship that I have with religion and finding my way to relationship from religion and also trying to then incorporate therapy. And our first question is, what's your healing origin story? and why is healing important to you?
Man, y'all just came out the gate swinging, right? All right, so my journey has been interesting. My relationship with trauma actually started from the womb. My mom had experienced 2 miscarriages prior to becoming pregnant with my brother, my oldest brother, and myself. Maybe around the year of 1990, my brother was murdered by a man that my mom was dating.
Whoa.
In his murder, I was in the room with him. And there's a book that's written that's called The Body Keeps Score.
Yeah.
So although I can't consciously recall what happened, my body is aware. So even as a toddler, I was aware that there was supposed to be somebody else there with me, but I really didn't understand. And around the age of 10 or 11, my mom finally sit me down and showed me a picture of my brother and asked me, who was he? And I was like, that's me. She said, no, you don't remember him? And I'm like, no. And she tells me that this is your brother. Around that time, I discovered that my stepfather was a functioning drug addict. My mom had just finished up with nursing school, and my mom is trying to keep the family together. And in the process of that, my mom is also on her own journey of discovering God and discovering herself and healing herself and all of that good stuff. And so my mom was the one that actually taught me the power of prayer. I grew up in a small town in Arkansas, Osceola, Arkansas. And so if y'all have seen The Color Purple, I grew up in the church that was out in the country with the hardwood floors and the windows are raised during the summer. And these old people, they had a relationship with God that manifested itself through nature. So they were the sharecroppers. They were the people that had less than a 3rd grade education. They were the sons and daughters of slaves, people who genuinely were slaves, or they were born on these plantations. And so they were people who literally had to believe in God because there was nothing else to believe in. And because there were no other options, they had these encounters with the divine that we now try to fight or curate for now. It was just random life for them, right? And so in the process of that, my mom teaches me how to pray, but in that process, both my mom and even my stepfather as a functioning addict, they were adamant about me finding my own voice, having my own voice, and being my own person. So that's also like another relationship that I found with trauma, that although you are in traumatic experiences by way of your parents, they're still creating safe space for you to vocalize and say, hey, that hurt me. I don't understand it. I don't like it. But I want to bring it to you, even if my voice had to shake in the process. And so that's kind of like my introductory journey to trauma. And then once I came to college, I got access to therapists. Coming from a small community, again, backwoods Arkansas, Black therapists. We didn't do that. You know, if you went to a therapist, that meant you crazy. That meant something going on, right? And so when I came to the AUC and I was surrounded by Black excellence, and it's already in your student fees, you know, stuff is going on. You might as well go and use the money. You just pay for it, dog. So, and even my journey in becoming a psychology major, I was thinking about it. I started out at Morehouse's biology pre-med.
Same.
Yeah. And my stepfather died from complications with colon cancer my sophomore year. And I've already accepted my call to ministry. I come home. I find my stepdad dying. We watched him die. I'm now taking on the strong role of cleaning up his things, packing his things, preparing his eulogy, writing obituaries. And I'm trying to be strong for everybody. He died in July. I was back in the AUC that August. And I was trying to work my way through the pain. And round about October, grief and depression sat on my dorm room bed and said, hey, come sit and talk with us. I didn't know what it was. I couldn't get up and go to class. I couldn't go eat in the cafeteria. And so I basically flunked out of the biology pre-med program. And what could have been destruction actually turned into a blessing. Psychology was my minor. And so they were like, listen, if you plan on graduating from Morehouse, you got to figure this out, brother. And so I switched my major to my minor. That's how I ended up in psychology. And I feel like that was such a divine move. And it's interesting how sometimes we attempt to avoid pain, But sometimes pain is the birthing canal to purpose.
Yeah. Come on.
What have we devoided ourselves of? Because we're too damn afraid of pain.
Mm-hmm.
What amounts of creativity is stopped up, locked up, and blocked because we are attempting to protect ourselves from the fall that we feel like is going to break us?
Ooh, come on.
That's good.
And isn't it beauty in the breaking?
Yeah.
Anything that has been birthed into the earth had to break something to get here. Anything that has been birthed into the earth had to break something to get here. You have to break your mama's bags of water.
Come on.
And if it's a dry birth, it's dangerous for both mama and baby.
Yeah.
We all have to break something to get here. So it's like, life. I'm learning now in my mid-30s that life is all about breaking, mending, and re-breaking again.
Wow. Wow.
Think about it.
Ooh.
That's deep.
Breaking, mending, and re-breaking again.
Yeah. You said so many things that I'm processing. I'm like, how do I keep going from this point? I mean, that part. I mean, there's so many things that you said that I'm like sitting here trying to like reflect on. I'm gonna have to process a little bit more. But so you led with your story on trauma.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Was it the stint of or the experience of depression that was like that triggered you, or was the catalyst for you to be like, hey, let me go get some help outside of me, or like what was the moment that you were like, hey, I gotta go find somebody?
It was literally that.
Okay.
Facing the death of my stepfather, and the part about his death that I left out. Prior to him dying, he and my mom, they had separated. My mom was like, I'm tired of this drug addiction. You know, you clearly chosen this drug addiction over your family, so we're good. So they were separated. I hadn't seen him up until that point for maybe 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't see me off to college, right? And so I get the call from my mom. My mom is a nurse. She says, hey, I just got a call from some doctors. Your stepdad is in the Veterans Hospital in Little Rock, and they've only given him 3 days to live. You need to get home. Wait, what? And I remember sitting in my dorm room in the suites. I had a room, the suite mates. And I remember praying out loud, Father, if you cannot deliver my stepfather from his addiction, I give you permission to take him. Roommates are like, wait, what? Because we're taught God can do anything but fail. What do you mean, God, if you can't deliver him from his addiction, I give you permission to take him? But that's what I felt led to pray. And my relationship with God is I pray what I feel. I ain't trying to dress it up, clean it up, scrub it up. No, I'm going to talk to God, right? And so we get home, and I fast. And in the process of fasting, the doctors tell us that we're getting a miracle. His body started healing itself. And in the process of the body healing itself, the Lord heals his marriage with my mom, and he comes back home. And the day that he dies, me and my mom, we had a very hard conversation. She says, his behavior is reflecting he's gone back to his addiction. And I've done everything that I can do to help him. She says, I had a conversation with him where I told him, I'm actually going to watch them lower you in the ground because you don't want to change. And in the process of me cleaning his things out, I find his drug contraband. And so now I'm sitting with the reality of, do I tell my mom what I found, or do I keep what I have? Because also you have a responsibility with the information that you have so that your information isn't reflecting trauma on those that are around you that are vulnerable. That's the responsibility of community, right?
Absolutely.
If you have a level of information that you know that is going to be traumatic, breaking, unnecessarily breaking for those that are around you, you have to be a gatekeeper to that. And so I had to sit in that reality that my dad's addiction took him. And so I'm dealing with my dad's addiction took him. What I prayed for, what I hoped for actually died. I watched it die. I'm dealing with the wrestle of my own theology because God, I thought you can do anything and everything but fail. And I'm miles away from home by myself, figuring out life as a Black man. That's a lot.
That's a lot.
And so when depression came and sat down and said, hey, big dog, come hang with me. I said, all right, I got to go do something for me because if I don't, I'm going to self-destruct. And so I started going to somebody just talking through about that. And I thought that I was just talking to them about that, and I left it just as that. I picked therapy back up again when I turned 30. I was molested by a female cousin. Had totally forgotten about it until one day we were having family prayer. We were doing an intervention. And by now I'm seen as the pastor of the family. And so we're praying for said relative. And in the process of praying for her, she lets go of the hands in the circle. And it was the way that she hugged me and kissed the nape of my neck. My body went back to the 5-year-old stuck in the closet with her. And I was like, wait a minute. No, this did happen to me. And so by now I'm an adult. I got a job. I got access to resources. And I'm like, oh, I got to do something about this. I completely forgot. I had stuff that's so deep inside of me that I wasn't aware, not knowing that me stuffing that in me was actually stopping me from accepting intimate romantic love, and I didn't know it. God had to permit that to come up. The moment that I started healing that, maybe a year later, me and my wife found each other.
Wow.
So again, another lesson. What things are actually being stopped or voided or barricaded out of our lives because we've buried trauma so deep in us? Some blessings, they are ours, but they're kind of like airplanes waiting for their landing pad. They got to keep circling over and over and over because there's some trash on the landing strip. And God loved you and them too much to allow that to land and enter into your life.
That's good.
Yeah.
Ooh, so much goodness. You want to get the next one?
Yeah, well, I think a part of what, had been holding me back was like this idea that we're supposed to be perfect, right? And that...
Who told you that?
I think I learned it from like just growing up, being socialized into it as a part of, what I learned from my father about what he believed manhood was supposed to be, how men are supposed to care for their families. And he was by no means perfect. I think, I think a part of all the fights that we had when I was a teenager, I used to move out consistently and go and live with my grandmother who lived on the other side of town.
Thank God for grandma.
Right. I lived with her for about 2 weeks and then go back home. But I couldn't reconcile this perfectionism that he was trying to impart to me that he wasn't showing, in alcoholism and the way that, he would talk to us and all of those things. And I was like, I ain't gonna be nothing like you. And I was trying to push back on, like, I'm becoming a man by channeling you. Like, you taught me, don't let any man talk to you like that. And here you are talking to me in that way. Yeah. And so we, nothing if you but. And that perfectionism, I think, is what taught me to, like, try to stuff my failures. Try to stuff the stuff that I believe that was meant for me to grow, and I believe that by hiding that and like finding another path to what I believe to be success, I didn't allow myself to get introduced to healing. Really, like I stuffed a lot of that stuff. I didn't talk about it. I found what I believe to be another way. I was hurting all along that time and just trying to find some semblance of success. And like you said, just like circling, right? Not leaning into what my story really was, not talking about how much hurting I was doing, how much I was hurting other people in the process, giving myself permission to do all of those things because I was trying to get to whatever this imaginary destination, this imaginary point of success was. And that was very difficult for me. And I didn't get to the point to, where I was ready to really go to therapy for myself until I was 39, 40 years old.
Wow.
And I had done a lot of damage, had hurt a lot of folk, and thought that I was doing the right thing by them and by myself just by overperforming, doing what I wanted to look good on paper. Wanted people to be able to say, that's a good guy right there. And, I was a mess on the inside because I didn't realize that I had some healing to do. And I was hiding out.
This is resonating with me. I think for my story in particular, grew up in church regularly, church camps on the summertime, Bible studies, church twice on Sundays, right? Like youth group, all of that. And grew up with a mom who was an elder and a minister, and had always been, and a biological father who's a pastor. And I don't recall anyone ever talking about therapy. It was kind of like they say counseling, right? And it just felt far off. Like it was not ever anything somebody would entertain. For example, I have an uncle who to this day is going through a hard time. And when someone mentions to him, like, why don't you go talk to someone? He's like, oh, my mind is fine. I'm not crazy. So that was kind of how the rhetoric around therapy was when I grew up. And so didn't have any experience with it my entire life until I got into about my 30s. And I kind of around that time, early 30s, started to intentionally unlearn things that I feel like didn't serve me well from a super religious upbringing. And was feeling like there's more to this than I think what I've been taught. Just like we go to a medical doctor when there's something hurting in our body. Surely, if I'm shot, I can't pray that away.
Right.
Right. Surely.
So
if I'm going through something else, mentally, emotionally, then, and if God gave the professions of those people to have that expertise, then it must be okay, right, for me to seek out that help. And I didn't know what it would do for me, but the first thing I think I learned was I did not know myself at all. Do you know what I mean? Like the amount of self-awareness that I have gained from therapy is just kind of like, I've been just going through life. I think under this guise, I think a lot of folks within the church, unfortunately, is like we're taught to, as if God is outside of us, right? And we're just kind of going along with someone puppet stringing our lives, right? Versus having any intentional co-creative power over your life. And so I'm trying to get to a point here. The power for me of God and therapy is like, I do need my faith. And I also need this other part of my life where I'm aware of my traumas, how I'm showing up, my behaviors, my thoughts, my emotions. I need all of that to create a life that I desire and that I'm worthy of, because otherwise you could be self-sabotaging and not even really know it. And so can you talk about how you feel, what's the relationship between God and therapy in your opinion?
You said so many things. This is my own personal thought, my own personal opinion. So I just want to get that disclaimer. I believe that the practice of westernized Christianity is extremely damning and lazy. Here's why.
Oh, put your drink down. Come on. Let's get to it.
So it's impossible to be a part of any of the Abrahamic religions, Islam, Judaism, or Christianity, and you not sit with the paradigm from the sacred text that the upkeep of your own soul and your heart is your responsibility. In the book of Proverbs 4:23, guard your heart with all your might. Another translation says diligence, for out of it flows the issues of life. 3 John 1:2, beloved, above all things, I desire that you prosper and be in good health, even as your what? Soul prosper. Soul in that particular text is the Greek word psyche. It means the seat of your will, your intentions, your emotions. It's the essence from which your life flows. So according to the biblical text, there have always been some type of mental paradigm that's written in the text, but it's how we have interpreted, how we have chose to live it, where we projected the responsibility of our hearts, our minds, and our soul on a being that we can't even see. When Jesus said the kingdom is in you.
Come on, brother.
It ain't outside you. It's in you. So think about how many times we've cried out, the Lord gonna make a way, but you ain't got your black body up to fill out no job application. Even like the brother at the pool of Bethesda. He's sitting at the pool for how many years? Decades. Waiting for somebody to put him in the pool when the waters are troubled. Jesus walks up to the man and says, Will you be made whole? The man skips over Jesus' question and says, well, Master, every time the water is troubled, somebody always make it to the water before me. Jesus says, again, will you be made whole? Yes, I will. Pick up your bed. Jesus didn't touch the man. Jesus didn't, we rebuke lameness. Get up and walk. Jesus didn't do any of it. Jesus just simply said, pick up your bed and walk, which implies that healing was always in the man. Healing was always in him. But he was too lazy. He was around incompetent people who would not help him to see what was on the inside of him, because honestly, they probably were lame too in some aspect. We just couldn't see it. And it takes the light, the fullness of light, the fullness of divinity, the God man, to show up on the scene and say, hey, pick up your bed and walk. So I just believe that when it comes down to westernized Christianity, the greatest mission field now in 2024 is not in Africa, it's not in Asia, it's not in India, it's not in any of the Caribbean islands. It is actually the United States of America, because we have focused our theology on haters, becoming Christian influencers. How many likes can we get? We're more focused on the demonstration of the gifts to show how powerful we are. But even without the function of the gifts, I'm already powerful because I'm created in the image and the likeness of power. We rely on other people to use their creative prowess in order to give us the answers and the solutions that we stand in need of, when each and every one of us sitting in this room has the same image and likeness of God dwelling on the inside of us. Everybody, just real quick, breathe in for me. Exhale. One more again. Breathe in. Exhale. That is God's power in you.
Period.
So that's my thoughts when it comes down to current religion and therapy, or the awareness of mental health, is that we have erased it, because mental health requires you to do work. You're going to have to do some homework. Yep. You're going to have to write some stuff out. You're going to have to be honest. One of the first steps in mental health is that, damn it, you got to be honest.
You got to face some stuff.
You got to face some stuff, right? But that's also the first step in deliverance. When you casting demons out of people, we can't cast out no demon that we won't name. You got to be honest. And it's the same thing in therapists. Your therapist, your mental health worker cannot give you any tools to help you navigate through anything that you are unwilling to be honest about. Your therapist is not a genie, they're not a psychic, and they're not a mind reader. You got to come in and tell them what you need. And isn't that the same thing that we have to do with God? Although God is omniscient and omnipresent, we still got to go before the throne of grace boldly. God, that pissed me off. I don't like it. God, that hurt. God, I'm actually in the place where I don't know how to accept that compliment. What in me gets tight when people start complimenting me? What is that connected to? Holy Spirit, the word says that you are the chief teacher. Can you teach me how to love me? It's impossible for me to love my wife as Christ loves the church when I have no hermeneutic, no self-awareness of how to love Broderick.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm afraid of intimacy with Broderick. How the hell am I going to be intimate with my wife? I'm afraid to dig into Broderick.
Yeah.
It's impossible for me to take up communal space with y'all. Don't the scripture tell us the golden rule? Love your neighbor as you love yourself. Could it be that we are in a love crisis because many of us are in a love deficit with self?
Come on now.
We are on the heels of our ancestors. How many years being free now? Maybe 200? Maybe 250? There is a such thing as generational trauma.
Yeah, that's right.
Our mamas and them, our mamas and them, dads and them, for most of them, they are grandchildren of slaves.
Yeah.
Our people are coming from boomer ages. And most boomers, their parents came from the silent age where they don't talk about stuff.
Yep.
So my mom is a boomer all day long, right? It's impossible for me to place on her the expectation to teach me or to give me the tools to talk through. But her mom and them never gave her the tools to talk through.
That's real.
Some of this healing that we stand in need of as a community, it's not going to come by way of being handed down through community. Some of it we're going to have to dig up and find so that now we can be the plumb line of change in our families.
Yeah.
Going to acupuncture?
Listen.
What? Who? What? Huh?
It's so good.
But
It's so good.
you got to do it. You don't eat pork? Huh? What? You come from the South. We eat the whole pig. Listen. And I'm coming home talking about, we don't eat pork in my house.
Yeah.
You come from spaces and environments where kids are supposed to be seen and not heard.
Yep.
And here you are gentle parenting a 2-year-old, telling her, baby, stop your tears and use your words because daddy can't fix what he don't know. Tell me to give my 2-year-old permission to say, daddy, that hurt me. And I apologize. I'm changing my entire bloodline. And all it took was for me to sit down on somebody's doggone couch and do the work.
Come on.
Whose bloodline is not going to change because we refuse to do the work? And sometimes my therapist, I want to jump through the screen and choke her out. Because Tracy, don't talk to me like that. My therapist, shout out to Tracy Gatlin. My therapist, she say some stuff that's off the wall, and I be like, I'm real pissed at her because, ma'am, you don't know me. But I have to sit in it. You know, you got to sit in it. Why am I offended? Why do I feel some type of way? Why did that piss me off? And then I have to be honest, Miss Tracy, that made me mad, but I understood what you were saying. And this is what I heard. This is what I got. So going back to your question, I think that westernized American Christianity is extremely lazy because we're projecting on God to do for us what the scripture says that we are empowered to do for ourselves. God is not responsible for your heart. You are.
You don't have to say it again.
God is not responsible for your heart. You are. Your husband ain't, your wife ain't, your mom ain't, your dad ain't, your lover ain't, your job ain't. You are responsible for your heart.
You know, it's shit.
All right.
I think what I'm learning about both God and therapy in this season for me is that I've always had this relationship where I externalize God, like you were talking about. Like there was some all-knowing, all-powerful being that I had to rely on to do these things for me, and none of the work was mine. And I'm coming to, and I've been in a season really in my life in the last 2 years or so where I'm really understanding that God is in me. But even with him being in me, he wants a better relationship with me.
Absolutely.
And, I had told myself that, I do enough good, right? I'm a social worker. I do this, I do that. I go to church. I tithe a little bit, all those things, and I'm doing enough for God to be able to release these things that I want, right? And then giving myself permission to be upset with God when the things don't happen that I want to happen, and not being mad at him and not telling him and being like, making up my mind that, well, I ain't talking to God, then I ain't doing nothing else for you because you haven't done what I wanted you to do. And basically having this transactional relationship with God.
Right.
And what I realized across the board was I had transactional relationships with everybody, really, that I was in relationship with, and that's who I was, right? And what I had to find out about myself, that it wasn't exclusive to my spiritual relationship. Like I was kind of an asshole in all of these relationships because I was willing to do all these different things if folks did what I wanted them to do.
Yeah.
Like I'm gonna operate in this way, but you gotta deal with me this way, right? I was on some. I'm gonna match energy, right? Whatever you do, that's what we doing, right? And what God has been working with me on is like, are you doing this because you good, right? Are you doing this because you truly good? Or are you doing this because you want something? Right? And had to deal with myself, like, am I a good person, or do I want something from folks?
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? And I think my therapeutic journey has been around that too, like learning to turn that thing back towards me.
Yes.
And like, who am I in relationship, right? Who am I when stuff don't go my way?
Yeah.
When, friendships don't go the way that I want them to go. When, my relationship with my wife and my coworkers doesn't go the way that I want it to go.
Mm-hmm.
Will I stop showing up as who I am when those two things don't match?
Mm-hmm.
And I think the biggest problem that has held me back from being able to grow, and it is my issue with God and with therapy. I've been like, these niggas got receipts. They know who I've been in the past, because there's people who have had interactions with me in relationship that have not been favorable. Like, before I was in therapy, before I knew things about myself that needed to be healed, and I had this shame around that. Had this shame around even starting doing this podcast, because I was like, one day my ex-wife gonna go lie and be like, that nigga lying. Because that maybe at that time in my life, that wasn't her experience of me, right? And I felt like God had that same vendetta over my head that someday he was gonna expose me. And I was like, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna continue to play small because I don't want to be exposed.
Yeah.
Right? And it was really like the person that has the most receipts is me. Like, I know the stuff that I've done, the stuff that I've been caught for, the stuff that I got away with, but I hold myself back and be like, don't show up in these spaces because somebody gonna come with a receipt. And, telling ourselves that we got haters and all this other kind of stuff. And, it is really that, we give ourselves permission to shrink back rather than walking fully into what God has for us to do.
Yeah.
And isn't that intrusive thoughts and thinking?
It's intrusive. And they ruminate over here, but they be over here just like, hey, cuz, don't even try it, And we just have to stop doing ourselves the disservice, I think, of believing that we're not worthy for whatever reason. And I think the development of my relationship with God is that even when I wasn't doing it right, I was still worthy.
Yes.
Right?
Okay.
Even when I just stepped out there and just did the thing and I messed up a relationship, I was still worthy even then.
Absolutely.
I don't carry any shame for what I have to do to learn.
Yeah.
Right? And to be in a relationship. And I can spin the block and apologize if nothing else.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right? And a lot of times when we mess stuff up, we'll be like, all right, I got to ball out with up and throw it away. Gotta make some new friends, gotta do some new whatever it is. But we owe ourselves the ability to be able to grow.
Yeah.
To grow through things, rather than just to go through them.
Yeah. That's so good. y'all having a good time?
I'm gonna skip around a little bit.
Okay.
Cool. Some information that I want to jump into. So, what's one thing you wish someone would have told you when you started prioritizing your healing and growth?
Man. Embrace all parts of you in the squeeze. Oftentimes, if you begin your journey with healing is messy as hell. And it hurt like hell. And it's like, as you are coming into deeper awareness of yourself, and you're pulling up stuff and you're giving yourself permission to be honest with you about you, but also honest about your experiences, it can cause you to spiral.
Yeah.
It can cause you to lose you in the process because you're coming up against the perfectionism.
Yeah.
You punching and jabbing at your ego. And then you're also putting yourself in a healing cocoon where you're having to forgive without receiving apology. Where, damn it, I know I deserve an apology from you.
Yeah.
But my heart is my responsibility. So if my dad isn't man enough to apologize for the abandonment,
or isn't here,
because some people we gotta receive the apology from that's in the grave. My healing is my responsibility. Some of us also have to forgive time. 1999 was a horrible year for me. 2003, 2001, when the planes hit the World Trade Center and
The housing market plummeted. That was a hard time for me. You know, you can hear people talking, you know, certain decades, the 70s was hard for me. The 80s was crazy. But then you find people living from the place of those years as if it just happened yesterday. Or for some of us, we don't like to go back home. I ain't going back to Osceola for what? I remember what the Negroes did to me.
Yeah.
I remember how they handled me.
Yeah.
I remember how they treated me. So we have these whole inner vows we made about spaces that we say that we would never go back to, but are actually dry and weary places because we refuse to be the Ezekiels that can go in and speak to the dry bones there. The dry bones never would have came alive had Ezekiel not gone and seen them to hear the Lord say, Ezekiel, can these dry bones live? Only but you know, God. What moments with the divine are we missing because we haven't forgiven places, people, times, and things? So yeah, my journey with therapy, my journey with healing, what I wish that somebody would have told me was to embrace all of me, even in the squeeze.
Oh, that's good. I wish someone had told me that once I started to heal myself, it was going to impact my relationships around me.
Oh, yeah.
So now all of a sudden, I got boundaries. Now all of a sudden, I'm speaking up for myself. I'm not holding on to the thing that, for the sake of people pleasing, I'm not going to say it. I'm going to just let it go. But now I'm actually voicing how I feel. And people are like, wait a minute. You know, like, oh, you got something to say now, right? So that completely caught me off guard. And I even took that back to my therapist, like, hey, I feel like I'm in like friction, not arguments. I'm like, I feel like I have more friction. She's like, yeah. You know, like you're giving it away now. You're not holding it. And I was like, oh, I wish I had known that. But in the spirit of perfectionism, you know, I'm a over prepare, over research. And so for me, it was like, okay, how can I get an A in therapy? So I would have wanted to know, you know,
ain't no A's, big dog. Ain't no A's.
I'm gonna talk about this thing. It's gonna take me this long to heal. It's gonna be linear. I'm gonna be done with it, and then everybody around me is gonna be fine with it. And it's not like that. Check mark. That's how I live my life, and I'm actually actively in therapy now, dealing with like actually life is not like that. Like, So yeah, I wish. What about you? What do you think?
Man, I wish somebody had told me how much it was gonna hurt. Just to see myself as not always the person who was right in situations.
Were you the golden child growing up?
No.
Okay.
We got siblings over here.
No.
We got siblings over here.
Siblings would disagree, but I was not. And you know what? What I can do is honor what their perspective of it may have been. You know, for me, I think that studying and stuff like that came easy to me. So, you know, from my perspective, I felt like, you know, I had an older sister who could get C's and it'd be okay because that was her standard. and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but I feel like my parents didn't celebrate me for A's and B's because that was the standard that I laid out, you know. And that was difficult for me to overcome. But you know, even getting into therapy, even like, and I really recently started studying like being a transitional character for your family. Like being the person in your family that really starts to try to move some stuff around about how family just is. Like since my grandmother passed away, you know, I feel like family isn't as close. Like everybody does their own individual thing. And there are a lot of conversations that we just don't have as family members. People don't really know how to talk to each other about issues and problems, and everybody kind of hides their stuff. And, you know, I don't mind having, I used to say difficult conversations. I'm moving to the point of having clarifying conversations now because I'm providing clarity about what it takes for us to be in relationship together. And I didn't know how much that would cause friction in relationships, even with my family. Even my mama calls sometimes now, she'd be like, they started talking about doing something together, like, you know your brother funny acting. And what she really means is that I have boundaries around like time and when we gonna do stuff. If I'm gonna be involved, then we gotta know by this date, this time. Other than that, this is what I'm doing. Right? And so it made, to her, she said, hey, he funny acting. But that's because I decided that it doesn't work for my life to go along as we have always gone along. And just being, I don't want to leave my family all the time being mad because we've been doing this same old stuff and it doesn't work for my life and my family, right? Being able to set boundaries around what really works for me, that's helpful for me. So if that means that I'm acting funny, then that's what it is. But I didn't realize how many, I thought that I was losing friends, but what I know now is that I ain't never lost a friend.
Yeah.
You know, a friend that is a friend is there, and they will allow you room to grow.
Yeah.
But it's still painful. I think when you set boundaries in relationship, when you haven't been a person that set boundaries. Like I used to pride myself on kind of being a politician in relationship. Like whatever y'all want to do, that's what we doing. Are we kicking it like that? I ain't kicking it. Hayes can do all that. Hayes can do the shirt off his back, whatever it is. You know, I pride myself on being that type of friend, but then I realized, like, hell, we ain't never doing none of the stuff I want to do. But it's my responsibility because I ain't never said I needed nothing in a relationship. And if you don't tell people what you need in relationship, if you don't set and say what the keys to success in relationship with you are, then you don't get the right to be pissed off with people because they don't meet that imaginary expectation that you set. Right? You have to be verbal about what it is that is required for you to, you know, get what you need in relationship as well. And I didn't know coming into my healing and like finding my own voice was gonna hurt so much for people who had experienced 20 or 30 years of me in this other other way that didn't have boundaries. Those changes were hard. And you let those people go and you meet new folk, but you mourn those relationships. There's grief tied to those relationships. There's grief tied to like how we used to be and what we used to do. And I still grieve some of those relationships. But healing is not linear. Grief is not linear. Hell, this life ain't linear. You know, we bouncing all around. I'm grateful to have a breath in my body to be able to navigate those spaces, but sometimes it still hurt.
I wanna offer this too, as I'm listening to you both talk, and family, y'all talk back to me if you agree. Sometimes our healed selves can show up in spaces, and the showing up is an act of violence. What do I mean by that?
Disrupts.
You can be so committed to your own healing journey that now you're enforcing your healing on other people who ain't ready for the healing. And so that's an act of violence. Just like when you start studying the scripture for yourself and you go to divinity school and you get these degrees with your educated black self, and then you go back home and you telling people, nah, that ain't the way that we do it. That's wrong. That's error. That's an act of violence to come in and try to flip over somebody else's. What are you doing? That's an act of violence. Although you may be telling the truth, truth given to people that are not ready to receive is violent. And it's wasteful. It's what Jesus said, casting your pearls to swine. So we're showing up with our dignified self and self-righteous. I'm going to show these niggas. And it's like, whoa, okay. Who you showboating for? Ain't nobody asked for that. Ain't nobody asked for that. I don't want your potato salad. I don't want your chitterlings. Right? So I'm just listening to you both talk. It's interesting how oftentimes when we do heal and we're so excited about the fresh water of healing, that we show up with our water pails splashing water at other people. You better drink this water. Whoa, hey, whoa. Up your brakes, Sean. So
that was good for me. Yeah, because I am one who, like, I get excited about things. I'm like, did you know this? Have you tried this? Have you done this? And if somebody's not ready for it, then that's a no. That's definitely something I'm going to take away. But speaking of giving water to folks, you know, one of the main reasons we have these types of conversations is we want to make healing, God therapy, relatable, accessible, digestible, specifically for our community because of generational traumas and all the things that we carry around and don't face, keep secret, hide, and all of those things. What's something that you could share with someone, an easy takeaway that they can start right now? Like if they haven't, it doesn't have to be go find a therapist, but is there something that they could be doing right now to at least inch towards freedom? Because
I believe in the power of practicality and spirituality. And so just a couple of heavy hitters that I have on my plate. And I use these things interchangeably. Journaling. Black men specifically. Brother, you got to get that stuff out of you. And oftentimes, brothers, we don't have safe spaces to communicate
desires, what we feel, what we have experienced, because of shame, because we don't trust even some of these safe spaces, or the safe spaces that we have really can't relate to or understand what we went through. So it's like, it's already pressure to express what it is, but then now I gotta explain what it is. It's just too much, so I just rather not. Brother, you gotta get that out. So journaling is something that I definitely do. Sometimes I don't have the language of prayer to verbally say, but I write my prayers out. So journaling. Secondly is meditation. Sitting with yourself 15 minutes before you start your day, 15 minutes before you go to bed, and just sit, right? For some of us, we're too anxious, even with the silence. So putting on positive music that feeds your soul, to just sit. So a dope song for me, even now, still old school song, Optimistic by Sounds of Blackness. Golden Time of Day, Frankie Beverly and Mays. Happy People. Anything by Stevie Wonder, As by Stevie Wonder, where he's singing about love. Did you know that true love asks for nothing? Her acceptance is the way we pay. Nigga, what? Just being able to just sit with self, hold time and space with self, not asking self of anything, but just sitting with self. And as those, in Buddhism, they call it monkey brain. As monkey brain comes up, you acknowledge those thoughts and you push them off to the side, and you come back and you focus on your breathing. So journaling, meditation, also getting out into nature. I'm from the country. I used to walk outside all the time with no shoes on. We had a huge backyard. They call it grounding, right? I didn't know that it was called that. It was just called just going outside and being country. But just taking your shoes off and enjoying like the dirt and the ground under your feet. Gardening, spending time with your hand in something that you did not create. I've also taken up sewing classes. I've always wanted to be, like a seamstress, but little black boys in the South don't sew. And so when I started my healing journey, it was like, bump what these people think. I want to learn how to sew. So my 35-year-old self been taking sewing classes for the past month. And the way that it is feeding my creativity, and it's feeding the inner child within me, right? Also self-talk. Y'all, I hold full conversations with myself in my car. Do you know how many of us don't talk to ourselves out loud? Because we are afraid of what other people would think if they saw us. Talk to yourself. Ask yourself questions and answer the question. It's okay. It's really okay. So journaling, meditation, getting out into nature, grounding yourself, doing something that feeds your creativity, mindlessness, but then also do something that allows you to embody. Cooking allows me to embody. It's like I feel my grandmama, I feel my pawpaw, I feel my stepdad. Sometimes I can smell them in the kitchen with me. I got this recipe that I'm following, but then all of a sudden it's like, bump that recipe. You feel, go get this Italian seasoning, go get these herbs, go get these spices, and you welcome that thing into the room with you. And now when people sit down and they enjoy your food, they're like, well, wait a minute, man, we didn't know you could make a sweet potato pie like that. I didn't either. You get what I'm saying? So those are some of the things that I would say. Oh, and then lastly, this is the most important one. Surround yourself with people who feed you. Community is one of the greatest assets that our Blackness has ever provided for us.
Who feeds you?
Who feed you? Think about it. Back in the day, some of the neighborhoods, you had Miss Johnson across the street that was able to watch your kids. You had Mr. Pete and his family down the street. And if your child acted up anywhere within that radius of your home, any of them families was able to check them, send them back home. You trust what they had to say because it was community. Or you can go next door to your neighbor and be like, hey, my mama said, can she borrow some cornmeal? And it was good, right? I think that when we started integrating, the Black community lost a whole lot. And so we have to figure out safe spaces for our Blackness that is welcoming, but we also have to find safe spaces that actually feed us. Not every friend feeds me. I hold my relationships in the pattern of the temple. The temple was a space where the children of Israel, they met and they encountered God. The temple had 3 phases in it. It had an outer court, an inner court, and a holies of holies. And so I hold my relationships in those 3. My outer court people are the people that I'm cordial with. I see you and I say, hey, what's up? You don't have my number, I don't have your number, but if we see each other, it's all love. It is what it is. My inner core people, you just may have my number. We can meet up and we can have lunch, but you don't necessarily know the ins and outs of my life. You don't know where the bodies are. I'm able to feed you some information. You're able to feed me some information, and it's cool, right? But then my holies of holies people, these are the folks that know where the bodies are. They know when I'm up, when I'm down. They are with me when I'm on the mountain, but they're also with me when I'm in the Garden of Gethsemane. They're with me when I'm hanging on the cross with my Eli Sabachthani. Why have thou forsaken me? But they're also with me at the moment of my triumphant resurrection. And they're able to hold up space in all of it. They're able to remind me of who I am and who I'm called to be, but they're also able to sit in the moment with me where I'm like, fuck life. I'm sick of this shit. Like, they're able to take up space and all of them be like, okay, all right, sure.
Yeah.
And so next week, you got to develop a sermon because you got to go preach. So how we fasting and praying for this group that you got to go speak to next week? Like, they're able to hold both the sacred and the holy that's within me all at the same time, and it's non-judgmental. Here's another reality that I'm sitting in, though. All of those levels you can transfer. Just because I got you in the holies of holies this month don't mean that you're going to be there next month. You may make the decision to exit, and I got to respect your gangster to exit. You may be an outer court person, but you've been assigned to my life to be a part of my holies of holies. I can't be so doggone guarded that I can't let you in. But I also got to be okay with when I let you in and your humanity shows up and it hurts me, I now got to let you go. Because sometimes people come into our lives to teach, and we are the student. And what they teach us is that you ain't so healed as you think you are.
I told you stay off my toes.
So, those are the 5 that I got. Meditation, journaling, listening to good music, grounding yourself, doing something that allows you to embody something that's mindly, that's creative, but then also surrounding yourself with community that feeds you. Those are my top 5.
So every episode, if you haven't seen it yet, and I'm gonna give you an opportunity before we leave to pull up your phones and actually go follow us for where our episodes are. We have a segment called Music for the Moment. So we love music, and we feel like every conversation we have feels like some song, some melody, some something. And so we've got Madam here, who is the music for the moment. It's a whole vibe. The song that you heard when we took our little break, Deja Vu, is actually hers as well. So we're gonna invite you back on up. Tell us a little bit about Rise and Grind, and then let me know when you're ready.
I feel great, ooh, I feel better. Had to go through pain so I can enjoy pleasure. Weather the storm, then I change the weather. Weather the storm, then I change the weather.
Final thought about God in therapy. The trauma that we experience happened in community. But the healing that we've been asking God for will be found in community. God isn't threatened by our questioning. It is okay for us to question God. It is okay for us to discover and explore ourselves. It is our God-given right to do so. God and therapy go hand in hand. Please embrace them. You can't do one without the other. You need them both. So, thank you.
Period. Y'all give us where can folks find you? Where your handles?
Yes. So on Instagram and Facebook, I am Broderick, Broderick. McBride on Instagram is Broderick.McBride. Also on my website as well, BroderickMcBride.com. I am a mental health advocate in sacred spaces. I teach and train teams on pastoral care, how to take care of people both spiritually and physically as well. And I am also a podcaster as well. I am the second half of the Let Out. So LETOUTT podcast. We've been on sabbatical as well for a year. But we are the Problematic Cousins. And we have a real good time. The podcast can go from talking about what's going on in politics and entertainment to a real quick sermon at empowering people on prayer and intercession. And you can also find me on Amazon as well. During the pandemic, I wrote a book on prayer and intercession. And after each of the 8 chapters, there's always homework, and the homework is centered around inner healing, but inner healing is being taught through prayer. So that's a little bit about me.
Love it. Thank you so much. And thank you again to sponsors, the Kendrick Healing Center. Make sure you grab the cards, follow them at Kendrick Healing Center on IG, but you're not on Facebook, right?
We're on Facebook too.
So Kendrick Healing Center, make sure you grab a card before you leave. And then also we make sure, like I said, send the promo so you can see the space, but it's way upgraded now since then. It's fancy now, so y'all gotta go check it out for yourself. And then again, the Couch Ministry, and then Miss Cole here, another sponsor over here.
Yes.
So this is usually the part of the episode, y'all. Episode 80. Hey, gotta change the weather, yes. So grab your phones. I'm gonna tell you how to find us. Make sure, actually, while you're at it, you can follow all the folks here. But this is the point where we usually say you can support us in one of 3 ways. First way, you can like, follow, rate, subscribe to Healing Myself. We are everywhere. So on YouTube and on Instagram, we're at Healing Myself _first. We're on Spotify, Apple, iHeart, wherever you listen to your streaming content. Just pull up an episode real quick, have it on in the background, rate it 4 or 5, and then, just tell your people about it, right? And then share it with a family member or friend who needs a safe space to start their healing journey. Second way, y'all are here doing it. Show up, pull up to an event. Like Sky said, we have Man to Man that's happening regularly. We're going to try to have another one of these, but it's hard, y'all. We do all types of, I think we're going to try to be doing all types of things. And then when you show up to these spaces, a portion of the proceeds are going towards a therapy fund that we're starting for Black adults. And then the third way that you can support is some merch, right here. So again, there are barcodes. There's one. One of y'all hold the barcode up for us? Yeah, so on both sides of those. One side, you can scan a barcode and take a look at the affirmative merch we have, the bar. So we have Healing Side on the Boulevard, the HBCUs.
Healing, hustle, hip hop.
And then Guided Therapy is now there as well. And then there's a code for a discount of $5 off until next week. And again, everything that we sell there, a portion of the proceeds are going towards our therapy fund for Black adults. How do we close this up? We usually say what now? Something like, it's important to heal yourself first. There we go. Because when you do, you not only change your life, but you pave the way for those around you to heal themselves first too.
And no matter what, we pray that y'all continue to join us. Less of us, more of God, more of what He would have us to do. Walk with us. I'll take this journey together. We appreciate y'all.